I'm going to start our, oh, there we go. I'm going to start our recording and connect us. Okay, un momento. I didn't want to start it too deep into our, too at the beginning of our conversation, but sometimes it's, sometimes it goes. Everything updated in my computer recently too, is what I'm noticing.
Well, it's funny because I got a reminder at 8 o'clock this morning because of the time change. And I'm like, no, it's 9. Which I thought was really funny. I'm like, no, not yet.
Okay. It's not letting me in. Log in. Facebook wants me to create a new account. That's obscure. My phone and my computer did all these like crazy updates. Did that happen on yours too, where everything's in like different order now?
No.
Oh my God. I don't know why it happened for me, but it's highly annoying. Okay. Hey, I think we're almost there. Recording going. Everything is running. We're 2 minutes after the half past. We did it.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, great. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a special day in the whole United States of America and all over the world. All eyes are on us today, I imagine. And welcome to Connect and Create. I'm Karina Sephora. We have the wonderful, fabulous Anthony Schmitt with us today. Anthony, anything you'd like to say to be present before I introduce the show and introduce you?
I am so happy to be here with people that I love and who appreciate the arts just as much as I do. And what better place to start the day than the world of art and love. And, and the politics will sort themselves out.
That's right. That's right. They certainly will, won't they? So welcome, Carol. And
can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. There we go. Because Robin and I are gonna come in both. It's Carol.
Oh, okay. We've got 2 Carols right now.
I would love to be Carol.
Oh.
Well, welcome all of the Carols, and welcome Anthony, and welcome Karina. Guess what? Tomorrow's my birthday.
Yay, happy birthday.
Yay.
Oh, happy early birthday.
Thank you. So I'm going to share a little bit about Anthony's bio and a little bit about what he's going to talk about today, and then we're going to dive right in. So today, Anthony will be sharing about where to begin, from still to action. There is a moment when you wait to start. And what is it that moves us into action to create a body of work? What is it? If art moves you, where are you taking those who observe your work? So that's the dialogue we'll be in. And before we get too far in, I am going to share a bit about Anthony. Anthony was invited to attend the art department of Arizona State University at the age of 8. It was the result of his 3rd grade teacher showing his work to the 8th grade teacher, who then showed it to a professor. That's why you share, ladies and gentlemen. It was an inspiration that raised the bar with his commitment to art. In 1975, he was the Artist of the Year at his high school in Mesa, Arizona, and earned a full scholarship. He had attended BYU, and his professors told him to study where the models got really naked. So he went back to ASU. His father told him to get a real job. So the world of display seemed the most artistic fit. And after years at Weinstock's and the Broadway, he went to Barney's in New York, and he opened Madison Avenue, Beverly Hills, and Yokoshama store all in 1 year. He left Barney's and went to work at the Museum of Contemporary Art. All right, there you go. There's a switch. And during this time, he met the founder of the Santa Monica Museum of Art. I love Santa Monica, by the way, sidebar. She commissioned him to create something for holiday at the Frank Gehry designed Edgemar. At this point, he created the shopping cart tree that became an icon. And during his 25 years of this installation, Anthony also was the art director for Tokyo for an arts summer camp for children ages 6 to 12. Materio. How do you say that, Anthony?
You say Mysterio.
Mysterio. Mysterio.
Yeah.
He curates art shows and in group shows, creates the space for artists to show their work, and recently in the Fresco Concrete magazine on Main Street in Santa Monica, which is his home. Please welcome Anthony
Thank you.
Schmitt to Connect and Create. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
It's so great to be here. Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, when you're an artist and you study art, you always typically you have these assignments from the teacher. This is what we're going to be studying. This is so begin, and then you all come back and you enjoy the journey with whatever that topic is. When I was at BYU, I befriended an artist named Robert Adams. And it was really interesting because part of the thing with us at that university was this being allowed to do nudes. The professors could do nudes, but the students couldn't do nudes. And so it's a very interesting thing being locked out of a conversation about nudes, considering you were studying anatomy. And so this is where I actually curated his first art show at BYU. And it was all these pink chairs, except there was one female torso nude. And I remember it was such a great show because it was this comparison of this pink chair and then this woman's torso. And it was a beautiful show. However, the security guards came into the exhibition and took down the nude and removed it and created quite a controversy in the school newspaper. And that was my first kind of like, you know, so it's one thing to be studying art, but it's another thing to just be, you know, creating art and doing art yourself and also partnering with people on what art we wanted to explore. And I really became an activist because there was an incident that happened at BYU to some young women. And I felt it was horrible that the school newspaper wouldn't cover the story. And so with a friend of mine, we started this newspaper called the 70s Press. And I realized that that's one of the things that happens, you know, for artists is they're willing to explore a conversation that may not be covered. And I appreciate that about most of my artist friends. We are, in a way, willing to look and explore conversations that other people resist having conversations about. One of my biggest influences in the art world is Hannah Hawk. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but I love the fact that during Nazi Germany, she would write these things and then her friends would say, you're going to get in trouble for that. And then so she would erase some of it, but you could still see what was written on the paper. You know, there wasn't really any hiding what her stand was and her position was on the art. And so that's one of the things I really appreciate about artists when they collaborate and work together with community is there is this sense of exploration and they're willing to look at how they see a particular topic. I know when I started teaching art in the camp in Japan, you know, I can't believe I'd been doing it for 20 years. And this is the first time I wasn't able to do it because of the COVID situation. But there's something with kids where when you say begin and they get started, it's just such an incredible experience because here's all the materials, here's what we're doing today, begin. And there's something really joyful about that experience. And then to take all their work and curate their work for their parents, it really is such a genesis of something that wouldn't happen had it not been created, you know, or the experience. And one day in particular, I had these two young boys who happened to speak English because I usually have a translator in the class. And they said, we want to create the curriculum today. And this is one thing that I really wanted to share, because sometimes, artists, they have, like, for example, I have the shopping cart tree that I've been doing for 25 years, but there's other journeys that I go on in the art world as well. And so that's why I really appreciate talking to other artists. But it's so great to sometimes have somebody say, hey, I don't want to follow what artists are doing right now. I want to do something new. And so these two young boys said, we want to create the curriculum today. And the part that was such a joy is I said, okay, great. What do you want to do? And they said, we want to break rocks. And I went, awesome. So let's get some goggles and let's get some hammers and let's go out and break rocks. And at the end of breaking rocks, they took their rocks and I put them in 2 rice bowls and I put them on pedestals framing the cafeteria to the camp. And the thing that I appreciate is that I then sat down with them and showed them Andy Goldsworthy's work, who's an artist who works with rocks. And so that they could see that there's other people out there, working in this particular medium, and everything is possible in a particular medium. And of course, this reminds me when I did start the shopping cart tree, the founder of the Santa Monica Museum, when she said, oh this is going to be amazing. And I had no idea how amazing it was going to be, because I didn't know how people would react to it. And what was funny is the Museum of Santa Monica actually took credit for the piece as one of their pieces, because it was just in their courtyard. And they and I was pretty surprised by that. And so I think that it's really fun to have artists have a relationship to their medium, but I also think it's really great for them to explore other mediums if they choose to do so. And this is one of the things as an installation artist, and as somebody who explores other mediums than because since Hannah Hawk was the mother of Dadaism, there is this idea that art doesn't have to be about artist materials, that it could be about the interpretation of materials, which for me is the beginning of recycling, and I really appreciate that, this idea of working with art, what already exists, versus just getting more materials and no shame on the classic painting and all the materials that are available for the art world, but it's just something that speaks to me, and I appreciate that I get to do that. So the one thing that I wanted to mention too was, when you say something about a particular thing that's your point of view, I think you're coming from a place of something where you know something. And I also think it's really fun to inquire into areas that you are unfamiliar about, and it becomes more of a discovery. I really like the fact that as I get older, I'm not attached to life being a particular way. And so I'm willing to explore mediums and things that I've never done before. And with the politics situation happening, I decided I wanted to do some artwork with Donald Trump in it. And so I made some pieces this morning, just with a Band-Aid over his mouth. One, a flesh-colored Band-Aid, and I'll show it to you like this. I don't know if you can see it okay. Can you see it okay? And then I wanted to do one with a brown Band-Aid over his face, since he's done more for brown people than since the time of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, and this for me is just something that I wanted to do because I wanted to encourage people to get out and vote today. And I posted it on my Instagram. And so the other thing is, when I've been able to create a group show and invite other artists to get together and explore and create a new body of work, I think that's a really essential part of what it is to be an artist, is keep continuing to generate the space for people's participation in the arts. And there was one group show that I worked with a group of artists about, and there was a moment at that particular art show where someone was upset because people were misinterpreting her artwork. And so that was shocking to me, because when you're hosting people to come and look at your art, if somebody does interpret it differently than you intended it to be seen, how can you address that moment? And of course, what I did was I asked the people, if you want to laugh at some artwork, why don't you come into this room and laugh at my work? Because I don't see laughter as something that's a bad thing. And if your artwork is is provoking some emotion that you think is inconsistent with laughter, I do think that people react to things differently. You know, and I don't think that your intention should ever be to control the observer of artwork. I think your intention should be, where does this art take you? When I made the shopping cart tree in Oakland, there was you know, they'd never seen it before, and they didn't have the same relationship to, oh, we love this tree and we're so happy that it's here. There were people like, what the hell is that supposed to be? You know, because they had been used to a traditional fake Christmas tree and not a tree made out of shopping carts that was, you know, 40 feet tall. And so, meanwhile, there were other people that came up to the tree while we were building the tree. And one of my favorite moments was this 90-year-old couple who basically said, wow, we never thought we would experience wonder again in our life. And this truly is wonderful. And so I don't think that artists' intention is to create work to be seen by people and get their reaction as much as it is for them to explore their expression on what matters to them. I also wanted to say that when my father and my mom, so I remember sending I actually called, you know, there's been a lot of press about the shopping cart tree. And I've shared pictures with my parents. They've both passed away since this happened, but I went ahead and called the local newspaper in northern Arizona called the White Mountain Gazette. And that truly is my favorite article in the newspaper because it was printed on Christmas Day, and all of my mom's brothers and sisters called her to basically say, you're in the newspaper. She's just like, what do you mean I'm in the newspaper? So we went to the door and got the newspaper. I was there visiting her, and she read the article, and it was so funny because she said, you've made me famous. I thought if my art makes my mom famous, that's my favorite thing about being an artist, because I just appreciate so much the space that I was given as a child to participate in the world of art. And I'm, you know, I can't imagine not being a part of it. So right now I'm dealing with this concrete magazine, which is the K-rails that are put up in front of the restaurants so that restaurant people can eat out al fresco.
Yeah.
And we're working with a lot of local artists to have their expression, you know, be on these K-rails. And when you work with the city, they're so afraid of anything that's controversial, so that it has to be, you know, they're requesting that everything be approved. And so I appreciate that there's a sense of protecting people from anything that's controversial, because you don't want to, you know, have people jarred or offended, you know, when they're out there dining and having a moment with their families, you know. But I do appreciate the idea of what it takes to have art continue to show up in your community. And so to have the neighborhood organization, yes, Karina.
Your volume did something a little different all of a sudden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was great. And then it just all of a sudden we started talking about the neighborhood.
All right. Is that better?
Yeah, that's way better. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, and what was incredible is the neighborhood organization actually collaborated with us to get a grant for these artists. And so this is the part that I really cherish, is the fact that when there's an opportunity for art, we can sometimes create the space for people to show up, to provide the money to make it happen. And that's you know, where you know, I'm finding myself with the shopping cart tree this year is actually fundraising, because with the COVID situation, the restaurant, you know, that's there has been shut down, and so now they don't have the rent. You know, it's just like we're in this together. So what does it take to generate a community supporting an art piece that's been a part of the community for 25 years? And it's just so great to have the response happen, and I just feel so grateful, and I know it's a journey and it's another whole concept, but it really does address something about, you know, being successful in the arts and what it is to generate finances to support it. And at this time, you know, when you've got politicians asking for money every other day, it's really great to know that people see an opportunity to contribute to the arts as well. And that's something that, you know, myself in my community and the people that I talk to are willing to generate. And I'm so grateful for that.
Great.
So the bottom line, as far as like, you know, what moves us to action, I think sometimes it's the fact that we see that there's someone not doing anything about it. And then sometimes we see we want to join people that are doing something about it. And I think those are the two places. And that if we really do give ourselves permission to begin, it's something that we can take on every day. Because when you wake up and realize this is what you get to do today, you get to decide what that is, and then you get to declare the beginning of something, and then you get to see how it lands on people. So I'm curious if anyone has any questions, or if there's any other things that you know, that we can, you know, talk about, because that's pretty much my spiel. Of course, I haven't gone to full amount of time. So
Well, did you show us your shopping cart? Do you want to show us the shopping
oh
cart?
yeah, so one of the things I'm doing as a fundraiser, I'm making these miniatures that are made out of 25 miniature shopping carts, if you can see it okay.
Cute.
And of course, I'm going to be decorating them. And I was really surprised this year, because usually Christmas decorations are out in the stores before Halloween, but they weren't. I went last week and I was just like, my entire life, decorations have always been out, you know, 2 weeks before Halloween. And so I went to 3 stores and they had no Christmas decorations. I was like, well, this is a shift. And I'm like going, it's going to happen. You know, so I you know, will be going this week to get some decorations and decorate the trees. I'm also having a print made of the inside of the tree, because the actual tree has a really incredible interior when you look up all through the, you know, 35 feet of the tree. And so I'm going to be having those available on my Facebook page as well.
Okay, now I have a question
Sure.
about
Hi,
your
Robin.
miniature tree there. So my first question is it basically constructed the same way in terms of the placement of the carts as the original?
Yes, it is. It is. It's a miniature version. Of course, it's much fewer carts, so it's not
Yeah.
as big.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead. And my next question is, where in the heck did you find those miniature carts?
Karina asked that same question. I found them at a gift show, and it was and they were basically part of this guy who thought they would be the perfect office accessory for somebody's desk. So, and then I thought, well, I have another reason to get them. So,
Were they filled with something like candy or something, or were they just?
they had a couple of at the show. They had rubber bands in one and paper clips in the other, like as a little thing to have on your desk to hold stuff that you would have on your desk.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anthony, I'm kind of just curious about how it was when you were little, like when you knew what you were drawn to, what attracted you, what you did.
Well, you know, it's really funny. I was telling, I think it was Robin just the other day, that my house was like a hotel. My parents lived in the valley in Phoenix, and so all of our aunts and uncles would come from these little northern towns, and they would bring all my cousins. And so I loved to play with my cousins, and I would dress them up. I would make costumes and dress them up. And I had this little weird camera that I would take portraits of them. So I've always been interested in taking pictures of people in costume. So for some reason, I've always been amazed with costume. And of course, no wonder I went to work, you know, in the world of display, where I was constantly dressing mannequins, and you know, I've always been dressing things up and exploring how we put ourselves together. And that's the other thing I have to say I'm really proud of, is because you know, when you do display windows and you have to tie a bow, there's a way to tie a bow, and then there's a way to tie a bow.
Mm.
And let me tell you, I've had people say, "Oh, go get Anthony," because nobody
Oh
ties
my
a bow like it. So, like, I have so much practice since I was a kid at tying bows to be just the perfect, you know, bow. And I mean, I'm talking, you know, fashion shows for Prada where they're like, "Hurry, run and get Anthony. He's got to tie this because nobody else
Oh
can do
my
it."
goodness.
And I really was so honored to my mom was, when we buried her, I was able to dress her and I was able to tie a bow on the apron that she was wearing in her clothing that she had in her coffin. And so
Got it.
there's so much joy about the permission, and this is the part too where I wish that every child, and this is the thing too that I feel about every child in the world, is there is an artist in every single person, whether it's painting or sculpture or woodworking or words or, you know, whatever medium you want to use. I just think that all children are ready to be artists in their field, and I'm so in celebration of them fulfilling on that, and not necessarily being limited by the idea that sometimes fathers have of you have to get a real job.
I got it.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, you know, could you share, first of all, thank you for sharing so much of yourself and the journey that you've been on. And, you know, I love the evolution of how you have an idea and you make it happen. And then people just go crazy over it, like the shopping cart tree, right? And the bows, you know, like that you become an expert in these really interesting and particular fields. And, but I'm really curious about this teaching art in the summer camp in, tell me again where it is. It's in Tokyo, right?
It's in it's in Tokyo. The camp. So for 5 years, the camp was in Chiba, which is at an Olympic training ground for the Olympic athletes of Japan. And this is really funny. I mean, I'm gonna. There's a little story that goes back to the Olympics here. So bottom line is, when I opened the Yokohama Barneys, I met this architect and I met the Isiton family. And in meeting and when you're seen as an expert in your field in Japan, they invite you back. So I thought I was going to go to Japan once in my life. And you've got to really, I also want to just add this little story too. My 7th grade art teacher, I made a poster about Japan, and my portfolio that year was stolen, except for one piece that was on an exhibition, you know, and I had won like 3 things from the fair. There was all this, you know, I got a lot of attention in the 7th grade. And so sure enough, I thought it was fascinating that I created this poster for Japan. And then I ended up going to Japan, and I thought I would literally go just once. But I have been so many times, and not just for the art camp, but also for design projects and working with architects and working with businessmen on their interiors in Japan. And so this architect introduced me to this woman who started an American style camp where you give children choice between dance, music, art, drama, you know, tennis, horseback riding, swimming, you know, all of it. And so she said, "Would you be the art teacher for our camp?" And I said, "On one condition, and that's that I get to create the curriculum." And so she said, "Absolutely." And what was so fun is I was there the first week. I was there for 3 days, and she said, "Well, next year." And I went, "Oh, this is the next year thing." So I went for, you know, every year. And once you become a part, this is the thing I really love about Japan, is there's this sense of loyalty to who it is that they work with. And that to me is just such gold. And you know, and the camp has moved about every 5 years to a different location in Tokyo or around the surrounding area. And we just do all these art projects, and a lot of times I like them to work with other mediums just to explore what it is to make art, because so much of art in Japan, for example, is in Japan they have an expression: the nail that sticks out must be hammered in, which is an example of what compliance is. And so let me show you real quickly. Here's a piece of art where the nails are sticking out. And I had them do a piece of art where they actually had 75 nails, that's how many campers there were that year, sticking out of this little peeler pole, piece of wood. And the kids had so much fun. And it was so great to bring a concept in that it's not about compliance. It's also about celebrating each individual and uniqueness. And then it was so cool because then the kids could see the sense of responsibility that comes with that. So, and I you know, the woman who runs the camp wants to have it next year. So we are gonna consider having the camp for 2 weeks next year to make up for missing this year's camp. And this year, by the way, we did online. So we did things online this year.
I was curious. That was going to be my follow-up question because you had said you didn't get to go. And so I was thinking, you know, I have to tell you, I have, in the last couple of weeks, I've been a visiting artist for college students online. And this got like the impact of what it would be like to have your college experience be on Zoom. Now, I mean, I take courses and I lead courses on Zoom and I love it, right? But I was thinking back and it's like, I think about the visiting artists that I had and like you being the visiting person in Tokyo, visiting artist in Tokyo for all these kids. And so I'm really glad to hear that you did it online because I think that there's something that's happened right now where we can look at it that it's a loss, right? In some ways. But then at the same time, I mean, think about how accessible. I mean, in my own personal life, I usually do a couple of visiting artist programs a year where I go to universities or colleges or, you know, art centers or various things. And I, you know, do maybe art demos, show presentations, all that kind of stuff. And I think we've got a goodbye from Carol. Carol, did you need to sign off? You're on mute.
So sorry. Yes, I didn't want to, I wanted to say goodbye without being noisy. Oh my gosh, Anthony.
What happened?
Well, this is actually a mask that I made with the kids because I
Oh,
wanted them to understand that masks don't have to be scary and that they could have a sense of play with it.
Are they
So
balloons?
this is balloons covering a mask that I
you're
stapled.
amazing.
And the kids had so much fun because, and I told them that they could work with whatever they wanted to. And so this is why I showed that as well.
That's
They
a good,
loved
that's a
you.
good goodbye image too.
Sure, they loved you. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you, Carol. Good to see you again.
You too.
Thanks for
Bye-bye,
being
you guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye, honey.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So at any rate, what I was thinking was, I'm so glad that you did go. And so you were able, so you made masks with them and you had the balloons. It's funny, when you first put it up, I thought they were condoms for a moment. And I was thinking like, wow, that's a double entendre, right? Of protection and protection.
Right. Well, I did do a condom display window where, with a lampshade that was covered in condoms inside the package. And on the power strip that the lamp was plugged into, it was the lampshade on the lamp so that it was illuminating. And they happened to be red condoms and clear. It was a Valentine's window. So the red condoms were in packages and it was very, you know, straight and tidy. And the power cord said, I forgot what the power cord said on the one side where they were closed. But on the other side, the shade was all wobbly and all the condoms were open. And it said on the power strip, don't forget to talk to her on the power strip, which was a Valentine's window. Right. So, and that was, you know, I love being able to have access to materials no matter what. And it was quite controversial, but the store owner loved it.
Right.
You know? Yeah, and you have to have that kind of audience in order to take that risk and have it be that it just lands and not is anything just offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question. You mentioned that you worked at Barney's, and I have heard different stories about how Barney's began, and I was wondering if you could illuminate any. Because I've always wondered. I'm like, okay, if this guy's worked for Barney's for a long time, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know that the exact story. So Uncle Barney was the founder, and he actually sold his wife's engagement ring and bought 40 suits to sell in New York. And that's how Barney's got started. So it was the 40 suits that he sold from his wife's engagement ring. And then he started, and it was known as a suit store. That's where every men in New York bought their suits, because he only dealt in suits. And then he turned the business over to his son Fred, who then ran Barney's. And then during the 70s and the 80s is when Gene and Bob, Fred's sons, started running the company.
Oh.
And they were the ones that started it to be both men's and women's clothing.
Uh-huh.
And their inspiration was do you remember the Avengers?
A little bit, like, yeah.
So there was Amanda Peel that had the cat suit on, and then there was this English gentleman. So it was that was the concept behind this business, or this dapper, sophisticated gentleman, and then this sexy woman.
Right.
And then the women's division had 3 silhouettes. There was tailored women, body conscious women, and then comfortable, like there was 3 silhouettes that they always kind of, went after. And that's one thing I really appreciate, is the outline of that company and what we were able to accomplish for so many years. And unfortunately, it all came to an end.
Well, that's interesting. It's a very different story than what I heard for how it began. And actually, it was a friend of mine who used to work at Barney's doing windows.
Really?
Yeah, it had something to do with, like, they'd look through the paper when people had passed, and they would buy up the things that they were getting rid of, and that's how it started.
No, it was a engagement ring and suits.
There you go. See?
Yeah.
Why I had to ask, because I was always fascinated by that story, and now I know it's a different story.
And who know? I don't know what that story relates to, but maybe it relates to something. But it wasn't Barney's.
Isn't that funny? I just had to clarify on air.
Yeah. No worries, not at all.
Anthony, you've shared a lot about what you've done in the past, and my question for you is, what do you have that you're looking forward to in the future? What are you creating as an artist, as a creator, as a teacher, a display artist, a shopping cart maestro?
Yeah, well, I actually want to continue to explore. I want to continue to explore in the world of politics, what would have us participate in making a difference for our country, as opposed to this idea that somehow we turn it over to somebody else to make all these choices and decisions. What could be the genesis of participation? And I really appreciate the people that are turning out to vote and to basically participate in what it looks like to be a part of how our nation is run.
Yeah.
So I'd like to continue to expand that. And I also would like to continue to explore being some kind of art director for summer camps all over the world, because I love my relationship to kids, feeling that it's a safe place to do artwork. One of the things I did in Japan was I had kids do blindfold drawing of self-portraits, because I wanted them to understand that they can draw and not have things in the right place, but still be recognized as who they are. So art isn't about having it in the right place. It's about creating the mood and capturing who it is you are. And that to me was really fun, because then it had them kind of like own their own expression. And it wasn't about, erasers and making mistakes or somehow having to have it be perfect, that it's a journey and expression. So that to me matters. And I'd love to have that happen for children all over the world.
That's great.
And adults.
And adults.
And adults. Because the number of people that I've, when I share, that I had that same conversation with my father, and I actually listened to him, and I got a real job, and I worked in that career for years until I finally went, what am I doing? This isn't what I want to do. I loved doing it while I did it. It was great work. But then I realized that I wanted to, pursue more of the art, so going to MoCA and working around the artists at MoCA was just phenomenal.
Now, is this MoCA in LA, or
yes,
we have a MoCA in Atlanta too?
Yeah.
New York, so it's MoCA LA.
Yeah, MoCA LA.
Oh, great. And is that different than the Santa Monica? And then there's the museum in Santa Monica.
Yes, it is. That's a different museum.
Santa Monica. I
Thank you.
think of the name of the gallery. There's a gallery that when I'd come for well, when I went for the last global conference, I took the train from, downtown LA where the Lowe's, I want to say theater, the Lowe's,
Hotel.
hotel was, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I took a train down to Santa Monica, and I walked around in all the little galleries like we did on that cool art tour that you and Lisa put together years ago.
Yeah.
And
Was it Bergamo? Was it Bergamo Station? Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
love that area.
Yeah. That's a great art community.
So where
Yeah.
is the Santa Monica? Did we visit the Santa Monica Museum? Is that the one that had that big giant rose out front? That single rose?
No, that was actually in the Arts District downtown LA.
Oh,
That was in the Arts District next to SciArc, the Southern California Institute of Architecture.
okay.
At the Arts District really. The Santa Monica Museum, it was at Edgemar where the tree is built, and then it moved to Bergamo Station. They actually do not have a location at the moment, I don't think. So they're in transition from locations. So I don't know where the current museum is, or
Yeah.
but they were at Bergamo for years as well.
I
So
love that little area. That's like my quintessential, art afternoon dream. And I'm trying to think, there was that really cool Andy Warhol gallery
that was
also.
at Bergamo. Yeah,
But
that was cool.
I didn't see it when I went there the last time. Is that one moved?
Well, it was a temporary show. They changed their shows, so that was only for a period of time.
I see. Okay, great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, what an honor to have you all the way from one of my favorite places in California, Santa Monica.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Anything you want our listeners to know about you said you were doing a fundraiser for the tree with those miniatures. Is there some kind of event or?
Yeah, there's actually, I have a new Instagram page that's the language of objects.
Okay.
So you can, follow me there. There's actually a GoFundMe, which is gf.me/u/y3z79b. I can text that to you.
Okay, great. Because I could put it on the Facebook page.
Yeah, that's the GoFundMe for fundraising for this year's tree.
Okay.
And the plan that the crew is all lined up and they're ready to start on the 16th of November. So that's our, and I'm happy to start before we even have all the funds together, just so that we get rolling along.
Okay.
And trusting that we'll make it.
Awesome. Well, that's so great. Anything you want to share? And Robin, any questions that have come up for you? I know the two of you worked side by side with your book.
Anthony is he's the person I make promises to.
Yeah.
And that I complete my promises with, having to do with the book and everything else involved in my global commitment.
Great. Awesome. And what's your book called, Robin?
It's called The Magic of Modern Art.
The Magic of Modern Art.
How to love it.
Yay. What's your ETA for when that's going to be out in the world?
In time to sell for the holidays next year.
Okay, great. So around this time next year, maybe?
Yeah, well, a little earlier.
A little earlier. Okay. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Well, I can't wait to see how that turns out. And Anthony, thank you for being a person that Robin can make her promises to. That's a commitment to be committed to somebody else and to be a listener.
It's a joy.
Awesome. Well, listen, Anthony, I'd like to give you the last word. What would you like to share with the world?
Be the best you, no matter how artistic it is or just how ordinary it is. And I appreciate each of you and who your journey is and as it unfolds.
Wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Take care now. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Okay.